Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
Hey guys, welcome to a new series that I'm going to be starting, which is going to cover a lot of the news that breaks from now until the end of the season and onwards. Based on feedback from you guys, I'll improve this series, differentiate it from the series that also exist in the F1 community, as I know there are quite a few. So before we get going, if you could share the video, like or subscribe, that would be amazing, and we'll get into the news. So one of the stories that broke this week was that George Russell, 50% of the comments on his social media are hate from Polish supporters, whereas the other 50% is complete support from me. This is a quote from Russell to Autosport. He also said that he only truly cares about the view from inside Williams and of what Mercedes think of him, but you also do want to be respected, is something he said afterwards. You can, I wouldn't say understand, because hate is never understandable, but he is a 21-year-old rookie who has trumped quite significantly a more experienced teammate in Robert Kubica, which has annoyed Kubica's fans, and as is typical with sports fans in general, but when in F1 at least, when your teammate is beating you, it can be a very contentious issue, and fans, in this case Roberts, have gone after George for basically being too good in this case. Kubica could appeal to his fans to back off George, and hopefully he does, but there's a lot of negativity. Really, it's not a great story, it's not a positive story, and hopefully it gets resolved quite quickly. We've got some nicer news to share. Verstappen sees 3 or 4 drivers as good as Hamilton. So this came out again within the week. Verstappen said he had the utmost respect for Lewis Hamilton's achievements. However, the Dutchman believes that there are others on the grid just as good as the 5-time world champion. So Verstappen, of course, has had a wonderful season, being the only driver to beat Mercedes in a car that isn't particularly good, or at least wasn't good at the beginning of the year. You have to think at this point Verstappen could challenge Lewis and Mercedes all the way through the year. He's definitely going to challenge Bottas for second, so you have to think he's going to be a title threat potentially if that car continues to get better. There's another story that might prevent them from being a true title contender. However, I'll get into that later. So Verstappen also said he's not purely focused on Lewis. There are other drivers in the grid who can achieve similar things. There are at least 3 or 4 drivers with the same capabilities. Verstappen hasn't mentioned who he's talking about. He's just said there are 3 or 4. So yeah, he's kept that close to his chest, and it might just be a bit of gesticulation in the way of undermining Hamilton. You've always got to take these digs or compliments or side comments with a pinch of salt, because there is an agenda at play when they normally say something as nice as this. But it is good to see that potentially Verstappen does see at least 4 other drivers as threats given the right car. So yeah, that's a more positive story, and I will get into the third story. So the third story in today's video: Honda is set for very complicated engine upgrade dilemma. This has come out yesterday, and it's been revealed that Honda wants to introduce a new spec of engine, but this will bring about a grid penalty for the Red Bulls, which poses a dilemma for when the Japanese manufacturer wants to time the debut of this new engine. So they had the first one, the second one, in France, and it's completed 5 races. The aim to avoid penalties is to do 7 races per engine. So the Spec 4 needs to be introduced after the summer break around Spa or Monza, and this will introduce the grid penalties. Obviously, Spa and Monza, you have to look at the characteristics of these circuits. Spa and Monza are very quick circuits, and to be honest, you can overtake, whereas Singapore, the circuit afterwards, has a tendency to produce less overtakes due to the street circuit nature. Also, Singapore was one of the circuits that Red Bull wanted to focus on getting a victory. Obviously, they've had a couple now, and a couple of unexpected ones, to be honest. Helmut Marko, I think he said 5 wins was the target. So far they have 2, so they'll definitely be looking at Singapore for a victory. They also have to think about if they introduce a new one at Spa or Monza, will that be enough to get them to the end, or will they have to take a further penalty? And because of that, if they mistime it, will they end up taking a penalty at Japan, which is of course Honda's home race, and as it is their home race, Honda will have a lot of their shareholders and very important people to impress at the Suzuka circuit. So that's basically it. They want to make sure they make a correct strategic decision which pleases shareholders and will also give the results on the track. So the final story I'd like to look at today is a story from Helmut Marko. And the reason I say it's a story from Helmut Marko is because, like always, Helmut Marko has come out with, in my opinion, some total bollocks. He has come out saying that the crash in preseason testing affected Pierre Gasly's psychological capabilities and has had a detrimental effect which has gone through the entirety of the season and has culminated in Gasly being fired from Red Bull. As I said, I think this story is total bollocks, as are quite a few of Helmut Marko's stories, such as saying that they're not going to fire Gasly. Anyway, a little bit of a rant there. Gasly has unfortunately underperformed this year. He scores just under a third of Max's points, and he's in a tight championship battle with Carlos Sainz in a midfield car. So he's spectacularly underperformed. Now, Helmut Marko has said, I'll get into the meat of what he's actually said. The Austrian believes Gasly's crashes during winter testing in Barcelona led to a mental setback, the effects of which were only felt later. Not just once, but twice, said Marko, alluding to the Red Bull driver's preseason mishaps. Yes, his crashes had a great effect on the team's test program. We were short on parts and faced issues completing our test. Marko suggests Gasly bore the responsibility of the crashes, and that has weighed on his performance from the outset. And even after the season began, he says, he was not able to erase it. Until this year, Pierre was fast. There was no hesitation in overtaking. However, his speed has not come out at all this year. Obviously, the surprise demotion of Gasly and the promotion of Albon has shaken this mid-season up a little bit. It was quite a sleepy mid-season, and we are now only 9 days away, and we still have no further confirmation on 2020 lineup. So, yeah, silly season. It might be off to a slow start. The reason I think this story is, as I said, bollock, is because these drivers are professionals. They are trained from effectively birth now to be able to deal with psychological pressure. The reason that Pierre Gasly has underperformed this year is due to Max Verstappen being the number one on that team. And I'm not saying anything against Max because he is the driver that will win Red Bull Championship, undoubtedly. However, they have built that car for Max. And for Gasly or anyone to go into that car who doesn't necessarily have the same sort of driving style, they will always fail. Because no matter how good they are, that team is built for Max. Even if Hülkenberg goes in there, or Bottas, or Ocon, or anyone that you want to link to 2020, they will all struggle as long as Red Bull solely prioritise Max. And Helmut Marko is Max's staunchest defender, and he will say anything to protect his image and the image of the team and his own image, Helmut Marko's image. So I don't think there's any weight that can be put on this story, and I'm just going to kind of brush past it and just put it down to Helmut Marko being Helmut Marko. That's about it for this week's roundup. I will have all the news stories down in the description if you want to read them for yourselves. And yes, thank you for watching this first episode. If you have any feedback, literally any feedback, just put it down in the comments. I really want to improve, and I will take it upon myself to learn how to use the audio software and to learn why there are a few issues and to improve upon it going forwards. Anyway guys, like I said, thank you so much for watching this first episode. If you could like, subscribe and share, that would be fantastic. Thank you for watching.